Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to delve into whether or not the Nesco or the Carey Smart Canner are safe to use. I'm Rebecca from Simple Suburban Living. Now, just as a side note, let me say that whatever I say about the Nesco Smart Canner also refers to the Carey Smart Canner. They are virtually the same devices. You may have seen some of my videos demonstrating the use of this canner. And for the most part, people have found these videos helpful, but I've gotten a few, how shall I say, interesting comments. Here's an example of one of the more dramatic ones. Wrote, "Recipe sounds good. However, your canning method is not an approved method. You cannot safely pressure can in an Instant Pot type of pressure cooker. If you are going to be teaching people to can, do it safely, so you don't kill someone." Well, you can imagine that comment just made my day. In all seriousness, though, I'm obviously not interested in killing anyone. And while this message was over the top, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt when it comes to her intentions. Perhaps she thinks that people are actually dying as a result of eating food canned in the Nesco Smart Canner. If so, I applaud her for yelling at me. Now, here's another comment that I got from. She says, "Hi there, this looks very interesting. I just wanted to share with you that your canner has been tested by the Utah State Extension and it failed. I think you owe it to your viewers to share that info so they know before they buy that it could not safely can like it claims. You can Google this information or visit my channel. I did a video on this information. Thanks for your time." Now, obviously, her comment is far more reasoned, and she gave a specific reason for her concerns. The report she mentioned was familiar to me. I actually researched this canner a lot before I bought it, and I would not be using it had I not researched it properly. But anyway, I had already read this study, and I came to my own conclusions regarding it. Now, I do appreciate her message because, again, I believe that her intentions are good and that she is concerned that this canner is not safe. Now, I'm going to go over the Utah study that she mentioned and share my thoughts on it, and I'll also go over a few other considerations regarding the safety of the Nesco and Carey Smart Canners and whether or not you should consider using one yourself. Before I go further, let me say that I have no ties to the Nesco company. I am not compensated in any way by the company, and I have no personal interest in whether or not you use this type of canner. The only concern that I have is what I feel is misinformation about it, and I want to make sure and clear that up. So that is my goal for this video, and also I do plan to continue using the canner and continue posting videos showing me using the canner and also the Presto canner that I have. And since people sometimes have concerns, I wanted a video that I could just refer people to so that they could hear my perspective on it and then make up their own mind. So you can see that this is the Extension Utah State University Food Safety of Low Acid Pressure Canning in Electric Programmable Pressure Cookers. So the background, basically it says these things are popular. The popularity of them has raised concerns regarding the safety of low acid pressure canning in electric pressure, I would never say it this way, electric programmable pressure cookers, EPPC. So anyway, electric canners, basically. Particularly at altitudes above 2,000 feet. Now that's important, so keep that in mind. If you are below 2,000 feet, this study does not really relate to you at all. But anyway, I hope that you'll continue listening. It talks about the risk of underprocessed, low-acid canned foods, and so on. Then it gets into 3 popular brands of these canners, quote unquote, were chosen for this study because 2 of them because they're marketed for canning capabilities and have instructions recommending the use of USDA canning time to process foods. The 3rd was chosen because of its overwhelming popularity as a kitchen appliance. Okay, so the objective of this study was to determine temperature and blah, blah, blah. In other words, the bottom line is the study was to determine whether or not they're safe for canning low-acid foods. The 3 brands that they chose were the Carey Smart Canner, and that is the same thing as the Nesco, the Duo 80 Instant Pot, and the Power Pressure Cooker XL. They were tested at 3 elevations: Monticello, which is 7,070 feet, Provo, 4,500 feet, and St. George, 2,917 feet. The temperature patterns were recorded. It kind of tells you the whole process and all of that. Okay, so basically it's giving you the reason, the method, and the devices that were being tested and the altitude of which they were tested. And again, I'm going to link to this whole thing so you can read it in more detail. Now the impact, this is important. 2 of the 3 cookers, the Instant Pot and the power pressure cooker, did not reach adequate temperatures to kill botulism spores in low acid canning. 1 cooker, the Carey Smart Canner or the Nesco, reached 121.1 degrees Celsius in most conditions, but it was dependent on altitude and the type of food. Further research is needed before the Carey or the Nesco can be recommended for low acid canning, including microbial challenge studies to determine whether the time at 121.1 degrees Celsius is adequate to destroy spores in different food types. Altitude plays a significant role in maximum temperature in all brands tested. Regardless of manufacturer advertising, EPPCs should not be used for low acid canning. That's their conclusion. So the results, altitude made a significant difference in the maximum temperature reached. 2 of the 3 never reached maximum temperature. That is the Instant Pot and the Power Cell. The Carey reached significantly higher maximum temperatures than the Instant Pot or the Power Pressure XL. Okay? All right, so that's the gist of the study. And now let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, so I want to talk about what I consider to be major flaws in the way the study was conducted. The biggest issue with the study is that they did not follow the manufacturer's instructions for the different devices. First, let's look at the Instant Pot Duo. Now, what you see here is the control panel for the device. You can see there's a soup broth setting, meat stew, bean chili, poultry, rice, multigrain, porridge, steam, slow cook, blah, blah, blah. There is no canning feature. Now, they did mention that in the study, that this is not a canner. But in my opinion, it should not have been included in the study because it's not a canner. Bottom line is, they did not follow the manufacturer's instructions for this device. So the whole premise of even testing this device and then relating it to canning is, in my opinion, flawed. Now let's look at the next one, the Power Pressure Cooker XL. Now, as you can see, this device does have a canning feature. However, on their website and in the instruction manual, they have this warning. Important: pressure canning and altitude. Do not use this unit for pressure canning above an altitude of 2,000 feet. The Power Pressure Cooker XL will operate properly up to a maximum altitude of 2,000 feet above sea level. Now let's go back to the document, to the study, materials and methods. Okay, these EPPCs were tested at elevations, at 3 elevations: Monticello, 7,070 feet, Provo, 4,500 feet, and St. George, 2,917 feet. Okay, let's go back to the warning from the XL. Do not use this unit for pressure canning above an altitude of 2,000 feet. Do not. It will work up to a maximum of 2,000 feet. So again, when they tested this, they did not follow the manufacturer's instructions for the device. Okay, so that's problematic. Why they even thought that it was a good idea to include things in a study without following the manufacturer's instructions are beyond me. So now let's look at the Carey that they tested, which of course also pertains to the Nesco. Here's what they say about the Carey. They say that it reached the right temperature in most conditions, but it was dependent on altitude and the type of food. Further research is needed before the Carey can be recommended, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then they also talked about how altitude made a difference. 2 of the 3 never reached required maximum temperature. The Carey did, and so on. So you can see that there's both good and bad news for the Nesco/Carey canner. One thing to consider, though, is that altitude is the key consideration. And unfortunately, at least in this material, they did not indicate whether or not they used the proper valve on the Carey when testing. Let me explain. When you purchase the Nesco or the Carey, it comes with these 2 valves. The one on the right, the black one, is for lower elevations, 1,000 feet or less. It is 10 pounds of pressure. The one on the left, the green one, is for elevations over 1,000 feet and is 15 pounds of pressure. When you purchase the Nesco or the Carey canner, the black one for lower elevations is what's on the canner. The box includes the green one for higher elevations, but you have to remove the black valve and replace it with the green one if you are going to can in a higher elevation. Now, this isn't hard to do, but it is a step that you have to take before using the canner in a high elevation. Now, it's possible that when the Utah study was done, the testers followed the manufacturer's instructions, removed the black valve, and replaced it with the green valve. Now, unfortunately, at least in the documentation that I have regarding the study and any documentation that I've seen on the study, they do not specify which valve they used, so we can't know for certain. The only thing that we know for certain is that they did not follow the manufacturer instructions with the first 2 devices, and they didn't indicate in the study which valve they used on the Carey. Now, if they used the valve that came already installed on the canner, the black one, the wrong valve for the elevation, the results that they presented would make sense. Now, again, don't misunderstand me. I cannot state that they used the wrong valve. I don't know that. I can only state what is included in their report. But I do believe that their overall approach in the study was flawed, since out of the gate they failed to follow the manufacturer's instructions for at least 2 out of the 3 devices that they tested. Now I want to talk about the reliability of the Nesco brand. Let's talk about the claims that Nesco makes about the canner and whether or not they can be trusted. So going back to this comment by one thing that she mentions is that she thinks she owes it to my viewers to share that info so they know before they buy that it could not safely can like it claims. Now, I've heard the same thing or variations of it from others. The implication seems to be that the company can't be trusted. Like, well, they claim it's safe, but that doesn't mean it is, right? We don't listen to what the company says about it, is the general feeling when it's expressed in various ways. So a lack of trust in a company could be because they feel the company is at worst evil or at best incompetent. Now, this is my speculation, by the way, but there aren't a whole lot of reasons for a reputable company to make claims about a product that aren't true, particularly when it comes to safety. So Nesco is a brand that has been around for a long time. Here's a screenshot from their website. I want to zoom in on a little part of it and the date, 1931. Nesco has been around for 90 years. Now, you don't stay in business for 90 years if you're incompetent. You also do not stay in business for 90 years if you put out products that kill people. We live in an incredibly litigious society, and companies bend over backwards to avoid liabilities. Reputable companies like Nesco are much more likely to not say that something is safe, even if it is, than they are to say that something is safe when it isn't. In my opinion, Nesco has far more to lose by putting out a product that isn't safe than they could ever gain financially from selling an unsafe product. Now let's talk about testing. Nesco has done their own testing, found the device to maintain proper temperature and pressure, but I want to share about some independent testing that has been done to ensure the safety of the Nesco Smart Canner. The Nesco Canner is ETL approved. ETL stands for Electrical Testing Lab, and ETL approval is an internationally recognized seal of quality, safety, and professional manufacturing. To get the seal of approval, products have to go through rigorous inspections and testing. The ETL lab takes a product from the company and tests it to make sure it performs as stated. Then they completely disassemble it. Every component of the product, all the way down to the wires, is inspected, and the products are evaluated based on both U.S. and Canadian regulations and safety standards. So if the product passes the test, then the factory is inspected. So not just the product, but the factory is inspected to make sure that quality controls are in place so that every single unit that is produced meets the safety standards. So in other words, they don't just take one unit, inspect that, and make sure that it works right. They take that one completely apart, and then once it passes, they inspect the factory to make sure that there are quality controls in place with every single unit that is produced. To maintain the ETL approved status, there are intense surprise factory inspections 4 times a year. And if they fail to pass a surprise inspection, then that ETL approval is revoked. So this is important to understand that this isn't just Nesco's word or Carey's word. In fact, Carey goes through the same process to verify that the product meets North American safety standards, so both U.S. and Canada safety standards. Now let's talk about what the National Center for Home Food Preservation has to say about electric canners. Before I discuss what they say, I want to make it clear that their thoughts are based on the fact that they have not tested these devices, so it is sheer speculation on their part. Even so, as you'll see, all of their what-ifs are more than adequately covered by the Nesco Smart Canner and also, of course, the Carey Canner safety standards. So I'm not going to read all of this out loud to you, but I will put a link to this article in the description so that you can read it at your leisure. The gist of it is that they don't recommend using electric canners even if the manufacturer's directions say the device can be used for canning. Now again, the important thing to know is that they base their lack of recommendation on what they do not know rather than what they do know. So in other words, they're saying, we don't know, and because we don't know, we don't recommend it. Now let's look at the reasons they don't recommend using electric canners. Now, you can see that I've got the words up there, and yet it's going to be difficult to read them. But again, I'm linking to this entire article in the description, so be sure to check that out. But I will just talk through it. The first concern has to do with the temperature inside the jars throughout the canning process. Now again, they base their concerns on what they don't know rather than what they do know. They go on to say that the position of the jars and the flow of steam around the jars impacts the temperatures in the jars. Now, this is indeed true, and this is why when you put the jars in the canner, you leave some space in between the jars. This is standard practice when using the Nesco canner. Now, the next sentence is really odd. It says, for example, there would be expected differences in jars piled together on their sides from those standing upright on the canner base. Now, maybe it's just me, but I've never thought of filling my jars and then piling them together on their sides when I put them in the canner. And something tells me that this would be a bad idea for any canner, including stovetop canners. So again, a really odd statement to make since it really has nothing to do with electric canners. Let's look at the next one. So again, this is too long for me to read the whole thing, but you can read it on your own. I'm just going to summarize it. It starts off by saying that the thing that matters is temperature, not pressure. It then says that this is why a proper venting process is so important in pressure canning. Now, here's the interesting thing. I cannot speak to whether or not this occurs in other smart canners. But the venting process does happen in the Nesco and Carey smart canners. The instructions clearly state that you have to wait until there is a steady stream of steam and then letting the steam vent for 10 minutes before moving to the next step. What's even more interesting is that there are safety features in place that keep you from hurrying up this step. So for example, when the canner starts to vent, you press the start button and it moves up a 10-minute countdown. You can't hurry up that 10 minutes. You have to let it go through that process before moving on to the next step. So contrast this with a stovetop canner where you should also allow the steam to vent for 10 minutes before putting the weight on. But there are no safety features in place that prohibit you from skipping that step on a stovetop canner. It relies on the person doing it properly, whereas the Nesco and the Carey have safety features built in that make it more likely for it to be used properly. Now let's look at the third one. Since this one is short, I'll read the whole thing. In order to ensure the safety of the final product, the temperature in the canner must stay at minimum throughout the process time. Do power surges or drops with an electric canner cause the temperature to drop too low? How will you know if that happens with your cooker? Now again, notice they are basing their concern on what they don't know. Instead of making a statement, they ask a question. Do power surges or drops with an electric canner cause the temperature to drop too low? In other words, they don't know that that occurs. They're just throwing that out there as a possibility. Next, they ask, how will you, the user, know if that happens with your cooker? Well, I'm glad they asked. Again, I cannot speak to other electric canners, but with the Nesco and the Carey canners, if there's a power surge or drop, the canner will turn off and there will be an error message. According to the canner manual, if you get such a message, you need to discard the food. The bottom line is that there are safety features in case this type of problem occurs. And by the way, you can also use a surge protector when you plug in your canner. But if there is a problem, the canner shuts off and gives you an error message so you know there's a problem. Now, this got me to thinking about what happens if you're using a stovetop canner on an electric stove and there's a power surge or drop. Does that cause the temperature to drop too low? Also, how will you know if that happens when using your stovetop canner? Again, there are safety features built into the Nesco canner that are missing from the stovetop canners. Now, hopefully, with any canner, you're paying attention to what's happening with the canner, including a stovetop canner. And hopefully, you would notice that the power had gone off and then back on again, or that type of thing. But it's possible that you wouldn't notice. But with the Nesco and the Carey canner, there are built-in safety features so that even if you don't notice that happens, there's a way to alert you to the fact that it happened. Now let's look at the final concern. And it's another long one, so I'll try to summarize this. But again, check the description for a link to this article so you can read it for yourself. The bottom line is that the following 3 stages are all important. Number 1, heat from the time the canner is coming to pressure. Number 2, heat during the actual process time. And number 3, heat during the early stages of cooling the canner and jars. It states that when the processing time finishes and you turn off the heat, the food needs to remain at high temperature for another period of time. They do not state how long of a period of time, but they do state that you shouldn't speed up the process. The interesting thing is that the same process is what is recommended in the Nesco canner manual. It takes around a half an hour before the canner starts to emit a steady stream of steam, and you let it vent for 10 minutes, and then you process the food. Once the food is finished processing, the canner automatically shuts off. The manual specifically states not to do anything to speed up the cooling process and to wait for the pressure to drop naturally. The manual also states to wait at least an hour. And in my experience, I've found that it takes between 60 and 90 minutes for the pressure to drop naturally, which is also similar to how long it takes on my Presto 16-quart stovetop canner. You can also see that the guidelines recommend only using canners that hold 4 or more quart-sized jars. And as you can see, the Nesco canner holds 4 quart jars. There is just one other thing that I'd like to mention, and that is approval by the USDA. Now, a lot of people say that the Nesco or the Carey canner have not been approved by the USDA, and that is true. But something that you need to understand is that the USDA does not approve any specific canner. So, for example, you can't say, oh, my All-American canner is approved by the USDA, or my Presto stovetop canner is approved by the USDA. That's simply not true because the USDA does not approve any individual type of canner. Okay, so I'm continuing to do research on this, but at this time, I've found no reports of anyone getting ill or dying from food canned in the Nesco or Carey canner. I also haven't been able to uncover any lawsuits against the Nesco company or complaints with the Better Business Bureau. So I hope that you found the information in this video helpful. My goal with this video is not to convince you to purchase a Nesco or a Carey Smart Canner. Though I enjoy mine so much, I kind of hope you do. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I don't have a vested interest in the Nesco company, and I'm not being compensated by them in any way. My goal is to give you some food for thought in processing the information that is out there regarding the Nesco canner, so that you can make your own decision regarding it based on logic rather than fear. As for me, I'll continue using this canner and continue making videos showing the use of this canner because based on my research, in my opinion, it's safe. In fact, I'm considering buying a second one. I just haven't been able to justify it in my own mind yet, just from a financial perspective. But I love it so much that I would love to have two of them. But the bottom line is, regardless of what you decide to do, whether you use the Nesco Smart Canner, a stovetop canner such as a Presto or an All-American, or if you choose to build your prepper pantry by buying food at your local grocery store, I wish you the best. Perhaps like me, you'll do all three. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd like the video. And of course, if you haven't already done so, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.